Welcome to the Cu Chi Tunnels, 1968, deep beneath the Vietnamese soil, where the air is thick with smoke-damp earth and the metallic tang of fear. Soldiers move carefully, rifles cradled, boots whispering against the mud walls. Yet shadows flicker where no one stands, shapes that slip through the corridors, silent, watching, patient, almost breathing with the tunnels themselves. It was March 1968, the monsoon rains above pounding the jungle canopy, distant gunfire echoing through the forest. Yet down here, the tunnels pulse with a different sound. The shuffle of boots, the low murmur of whispered orders, and then something else, a movement just beyond the torchlight, a glint that isn't metal, a presence that cannot be traced. Some say the spirits of the fallen linger here. Others speak of shadows that mimic the living, but never act like them. Before we begin, leave a comment where you're watching from and the exact time you're listening. Tell us if your own shadows feel heavier tonight, because once you descend with us into these tunnels, you may start noticing things that slip past the edge of your vision, things that the eye refuses to hold. The jungle above the Cu Chi tunnels swelled with monsoon rains, each drop hammering the dense canopy like distant drums of war. Beneath the tunnels twisted and turned, carved painstakingly over years, narrow corridors of mud and timber snaking beneath villages, rice paddies, and forest. Soldiers knew them intimately. Every turn memorized, every trap anticipated. Yet even the most seasoned guerrillas would whisper. There were places that did not belong to the living. The tunnels seemed alive, breathing with each footfall, echoing steps carrying farther than the eye could see. Patrols moved cautiously, rifles cradled, torches flickering along the rough walls. Official records describe routine movements, supply runs, ambushes planned with care. Yet diaries and field notes hint at something else. Singular disappearances noted without explanation. Men who vanished mid-patrol, never found. Logs often appended fate unknown beside names cold and sparse. But survivors spoke of figures that shifted faster than a man could run, shadows that lingered just beyond the torchlight. Villagers told older stories, spirits of the land moving beneath the earth, ancestors walking unseen, guiding the living or warning them. Some said the tunnels themselves remembered the blood spilled above. Each corridor, each junction, each hidden hatch carrying a tale. Soldiers spoke of cold drafts where none should be, murmurs that carried half-formed words, sometimes calling a man's name. At night, torches extinguished the only sound, dripping water. Some felt eyes upon them, eyes not human. Reports mentioned skirmishes near the river. Yet in the tunnels, patrols would pause mid-step, sensing the presence of something, not breathing like them, not moving like them, yet moving nonetheless. Journal entries recovered later describe cold hands brushing shoulders, shadows separating from torchlight and vanishing before confrontation. One wrote, "I felt the walls move, heard footsteps behind me, turned, nothing, only my heartbeat echoing back." Another noted strange carvings in mud, appearing overnight. No one claimed responsibility. Historians argue stress could explain hallucinations, but independent accounts converge. Multiple patrols reported similar experiences, shapes in darkness, whispers in the air, fleeting touches. Always the same sensation being watched, tested, followed. Tunnels dug for survival became a theater of fear. The interplay of human skill and something older, something nameless. Folklore grew alongside fact. Whispered stories of the shadow walkers, figures mimicking human form vanishing when approached, appearing where fighting was fiercest, where men fell, where the earth drank blood. Shadows retreated into corners, then returned when torchlight shifted, observing, counting. Some letters home described them as waiting for the living to falter. Letters never sent, hidden in journals' supply caches. Soldiers feared disbelief. Even official reports contain anomalies. Missing rations items moved inexplicably. Sounds logged as unidentified. Faint cries in the night. Maps mismatched to physical tunnels. Some maps vanished from archives, resurfaced decades later, annotated with unfamiliar symbols. Patterns repeated. Patrols disappeared. Items vanished. Whispers spread. The tunnels retained their secrets. One unit reported an unseen force moving ahead near Ben Din. Usual patrol steps, then sudden silence. Torches illuminating nothing. Yet measured breathing followed them. A scout fired at a shadow. No impact. The figure gone. Only the echo. Cold sweat. Lingering questions. Multiple diaries recount similar events. Smudged with water ink faded. None explained by combat alone. Villagers had their own encounters. Children avoided certain entrances. Elders warned soldiers to respect the earth beneath. The tunnels were not empty. The soil remembered. Even hardened guerrillas paused mid-patrol, sensing fleeting presences. Shadows moved against walls. Reflections mismatched torchlight. Whispers repeating commands. Voices calling names. Names of the long dead. Historians later noted a curious convergence. Patterns consistent across independent units. Repeated in different tunnels. Corroborated by villagers. Lights flickering underground. Voices without owners. Shadows defying torchlight. Fact and folklore intertwined. Inseparable beneath Kuchi. The tunnels were vital for war. Yet vessels for stories enduring long after combat. Shadows refusing to vanish. Whispers lingering past torchlight. Each diary report, map, and story forming a mosaic. A record of human courage and the inexplicable. What lies beneath Kuchi is not only history, it is memory. Myth. Something that will never be fully understood. Deep within the tunnels, the men moved as one. Silent. Alert. Every rustle of mud or timber triggering a reflexive pause. The torchlight swayed, casting long shadows that stretched across the walls. Shapes that seemed almost alive. As the unit advanced toward a junction near Ben Din, the air grew heavier. The dampness thicker. And the echoes of distant gunfire above faded into a strange stillness. A scout paused, fingers brushing the rifle barrel, listening. Something shifted ahead, a faint movement, almost imperceptible. It began as a whisper, or perhaps the wind, the faint brushing of air against the mud walls, but then steps, careful, measured, yet not matching the rhythm of their own. The men froze, eyes scanning the narrow corridor. Nothing visible. Yet the feeling of being watched intensified. Each soldier reported the same sensation, the hairs on their necks standing, breaths caught in their throats. Every step forward became deliberate, slow, calculated. And still the shadows moved, always just beyond the torchlight, never fully revealed. One soldier, Nguyen, wrote in his journal later, "I felt a presence, following, mimicking, a step behind each of mine. I turned. Nothing. Yet I knew it was there, breathing, waiting." Others noted cold drafts that passed without origin. whispers carrying half-words, phrases that repeated commands, sometimes names of those long dead. In another entry, a young fighter described carvings in the mud, patterns that appeared overnight. No one claimed to have made them, symbols that seemed to pulse under torchlight, almost alive. The human experience here was immediate, visceral, fear and curiosity entwined. Soldiers found themselves questioning their own senses. Was it fatigue, hallucination, or something else entirely? The official reports mentioned patrol anomalies, lost rations, missing tools, unaccounted for sounds. Yet these documents remain sparse, clinical, avoiding mention of shadows or whispers. But survivor diaries tell a different story. A group resting in a hidden chamber recalled a sudden chill, the torches flickering, and then movement across the wall. A shadow that did not match any man present. It slipped along the mud smooth, silent, observing. Some reached for rifles, others just stared. No sound could be made. The presence was patient, aware, almost intelligent. It lingered, then vanished, leaving only the echo of footsteps and the pounding of hearts. Villagers outside the tunnels spoke of similar phenomena, lights that moved beneath the soil, the sensation of being followed, whispers heard in abandoned corridors. Children refused to approach certain entrances. Elders warned soldiers that the tunnels carried memory, that the earth retained fragments of every life and death. The guerrillas respected these warnings, half out of superstition, half out of instinct, the line between folklore and fact blurring. Another patrol reported a strange sequence of events near a collapsed junction. They moved cautiously, hearing water drip, mud shift, then shadows separating from the torchlight, shapes that advanced, retreated, almost mocking. An older fighter described it as watching me more than I watched it, measuring, testing. Attempts to confront these figures proved futile. Rifles fired, nothing hit. Torches swung, nothing revealed. Only the lingering impression, the undeniable sense of being observed. These experiences fed into the collective consciousness of the tunnels. Diaries, letters, and oral accounts merged, fact and folklore weaving together. The soldiers' lived experience was inseparable from the myths whispered among them. Each account added texture. The tunnels were not only a war strategy, but a stage for encounters that defied explanation. Some of the most chilling records come from reports of disappearing items. Rations vanished, rifles misplaced, messages altered, logs annotated with unidentified presence. Even maps drawn with care failed to match reality. Corridors shifted, openings appeared where none existed. Soldiers described the sensation of being guided, or misled, by something invisible. The line between ally and apparition blurred. Shadowwalkers became the informal term, used quietly, never written officially, described as figures moving like men, yet without flesh, without sound. They mirrored movements, observed mistakes, and disappeared before confrontation. Night after night, patrols reported the same phenomena, independent of each other, patterns repeating, confirming each other's experiences, reinforcing belief or terror. Some historians argue these were stress-induced hallucinations. Yet villagers corroborated many accounts. Strange lights under the soil, whispers in empty tunnels, fleeting figures that vanished before inspection. The convergence of human testimony and folklore created a living record, fact and legend intertwined. In this underground world, the two could not be separated. Soldiers began altering routines, moving with caution. Torches held differently, speaking less, listening more. Every sense heightened, yet still the shadows persisted, always present, always just beyond reach. Some even claimed to feel cold fingers brush shoulders, steps echoing in empty corridors, voices calling names of those long dead. Each incident reinforcing the notion that the tunnels were alive, not merely with human combatants, but with memory, with something older. By the end of March, patterns emerged. Encounters repeated across units, corroborated across independent diaries, and combined with local testimony. The tunnels were a mosaic, a record of courage, fear, and the inexplicable. Fact and folklore fused, creating an environment where human perception was constantly challenged, where the line between reality and the unseen blurred, and where the men who walked these corridors learned to move carefully, aware that shadows did not always belong to the living. The tunnels twisted deeper into the earth, narrower passages forcing soldiers to crouch, rifles held tight, torches trembling with every step. The air grew heavier, damp, laden with the scent of mud and decay. Even the bravest guerrillas moved with caution, senses sharpened, listening for the slightest hint of movement. Each patrol became a study in anticipation, every sound magnified, every shadow suspect. Reports from hidden chambers tell of items misplaced, rations disappearing, tools vanishing. Letters and diaries mention equipment found in impossible locations, logs annotated with unidentified presence, whispers carried through the tunnels, sometimes repeating commands, sometimes repeating names. Soldiers described feeling eyes on their backs, shoulders brushed by cold fingers, steps echoing where none should exist. The corridors seemed to bend, to shift, confounding maps, confusing the most experienced guides. In one account, a unit approaching a junction near Bendine paused. The walls appeared to pulse, faint murmurs rising from the earth, a cold draft brushing past faces. A scout swore he saw a figure step from a shadow, mirror movements exactly, then vanish before he could raise his rifle. The men exchanged glances. None spoke aloud. Fear was palpable. Yet there was curiosity, an urge to understand, to see, to confront. Local folklore intertwined with these experiences. Villagers told of the land remembering blood spilled above and below, of spirits guiding or warning the living. Children avoided entrances. Elders whispered that certain corridors carried memory, that the soil was sentient, that the tunnels preserved echoes of suffering and courage. Those warnings resonated with the guerrillas, blending superstition and instinct, shaping every movement, every decision. One diary detailed a strange event in a narrow passage. The unit moved carefully, torches casting light on rough walls, shadows dancing. Then a sudden shift, shapes moving independently of torchlight, almost observing, almost calculating. Soldiers attempted to confront them, rifles raised. Nothing hit. The figures retreated, vanished, leaving only the echo of footfalls and a lingering, unshakable awareness. Some soldiers began avoiding eye contact, speaking less, listening more, attuned to every whisper, every scrape, every breath. Reports of vanished patrols increased, singular occurrences noted in official logs, men who never returned, items left behind, no explanation given. Diaries hint at fear, but also fascination. The soldiers recording their experiences with a mixture of skepticism and reverence. Some entries mention carvings in mud, appearing overnight. symbols that glowed faintly under torchlight. No one claimed to have made them, yet all noted their presence. Shadow walkers became a name whispered among soldiers, not official, almost taboo, described as figures moving like men, but without substance, without sound. They mirrored movements, appeared in torchlight, vanished before confrontation. Tales spread from chamber to chamber, unit to unit, folklore building upon fact, patterns emerging, repeated independently, corroborating experiences, reinforcing the sense that something beyond comprehension inhabited the tunnels. Villagers continued to tell of lights moving beneath the soil, voices echoing in empty corridors, fleeting figures appearing and disappearing. These stories meshed with the soldiers' own accounts, creating a layered narrative, fact and legend intertwined. In the tunnels, perception was constantly tested. What was seen, what was heard, could not be fully trusted. Each encounter left a residue, an impression, almost tangible, lingering long after the patrol moved on. Some soldiers attempted rituals, small gestures learned from elders, offerings left in hidden corners, to appease the unseen, to respect the earth. Some reported a change, a momentary calm, yet the shadows never fully retreated. The presence persisted, patient, observing, always beyond the torchlight, always just out of reach. The deeper the patrols ventured, the stronger the impression grew that the tunnels were alive, not with men alone, but with memory, with spirits, with the inexplicable. Maps failed to capture the complexity. Corridors shifted, junctions appeared where none existed. The soldiers relied increasingly on instinct, on whispered advice from locals. Every movement was measured, every sound noted. But still, the shadows followed, sometimes mimicking steps, sometimes freezing when approached, always testing, always watching. Diaries describe soldiers hesitating, unsure whether to advance or retreat, the sense of the unseen guiding their decisions. Accounts speak of voices, low, indecipherable, sometimes repeating the men's own words, sometimes echoing names of the fallen. Soldiers whispered that the shadows were more than memory, more than folklore, that they were aware, that they were measuring courage, patience, fear. Some swore they felt the touch of fingers on their shoulders, fleeting cold, leaving a chill in the bones. They moved forward nonetheless, compelled by duty, curiosity, the unspoken need to witness. By late March, patterns had become undeniable. Multiple units reported similar phenomena. Independent diaries recorded the same experiences, corroborated by villagers, shadowy figures, inexplicable movements, vanished items, whispers from the dark. The tunnels were more than a military strategy. They were a living record of human endurance, fear, courage, and the inexplicable. Fact and folklore intertwined seamlessly, creating a space where perception and reality blurred, where every shadow could be alive, and every whisper a warning. The tunnels stretched onward, a labyrinth of mud and timber, corridors winding like veins beneath the earth. Soldiers moved cautiously, senses sharpened, every sound amplified. Every shadow held a question, every echo a warning. As one patrol advanced deeper, the feeling of being watched intensified. Footsteps that did not match their own, whispers that seemed to mimic commands. Each unit experienced it differently, yet the pattern was the same: unseen presences trailing, testing, observing. Outside the tunnels, the world raged with war, artillery booming in the distance, helicopters cutting through the thick jungle canopy. Yet beneath the surface, another war played out, a conflict between the living and something older, something that had always inhabited this land. Veterans spoke of corridors that shifted, junctions that appeared overnight, and shadows that seemed to anticipate their movements. They described cold drafts brushing shoulders, fleeting shapes flickering just beyond torchlight, moments when breath caught, hearts racing, and the mind questioned what was real. The stories traveled through whispered campfire tales, soldiers sharing experiences in hushed tones. Some laughed nervously, attributing it to stress, fatigue, or fear amplified by darkness. Others were silent, reluctant to speak, haunted by the sense that they had seen more than could be explained. The folklore intertwined with fact, each encounter reinforcing the other. Shadow walkers became a term rarely written, spoken only in whispers, figures that moved like men, yet without substance, aware, intelligent, patient, always watching. There were incidents where items vanished, rations, rifles, messages, only to appear elsewhere, sometimes in impossible locations. Soldiers wrote in diaries about symbols carved in mud, strange markings appearing overnight, glowing faintly under torchlight. No one took credit, yet all were noted. The combination of missing items and inexplicable movements created an atmosphere of constant vigilance. Every corridor was approached with caution, every junction anticipated, no movement casual. Villagers added their accounts, eyes wide with fear, whispers of lights moving underground, voices echoing from empty corridors, fleeting figures that vanished before being fully seen. Some spoke of ancestors' spirits guiding or warning those who entered. Children refused to approach certain tunnel entrances. Elders cautioned that the tunnels retained memory, that the earth itself remembered the blood spilled and the courage displayed. Soldiers learned to heed these warnings, blending superstition with survival instinct. One patrol documented a sudden encounter in a narrow passage. The torchlight flickered. Shadows moved independently of the men. A figure stepped from the darkness, mirrored movements, vanished before rifles could be aimed. The men froze, unsure of what they had witnessed, fear gripping them, curiosity gnawing. They moved forward careful, every step measured, aware that the shadows were more than chance, more than hallucination. They were aware, testing resolve, patience, fear. The bridge of understanding between fact and folklore grew stronger. Accounts from diaries, letters, and oral reports converged. Patterns repeated. Independent patrols noted the same anomalies, corroborated by villagers, lights flickering under the soil, whispers of commands, shapes moving in ways impossible to anticipate. These reports became a mosaic, a record of human perception meeting the inexplicable. The tunnels were no longer just a strategy of war. They were a living narrative, of memory, of courage, and of the unseen. As patrols advanced, they noticed recurring motifs, corridors that seemed familiar yet rearranged, sounds preceding their own movements, shadows that retreated when approached. Sometimes the sensations were subtle, a cold draft, a flicker of light, a whisper. Sometimes they were immediate, footsteps following, shapes at the periphery, hands brushing against shoulders, always fleeting, always leaving the mind questioning. The folklore deepened. Shadow walkers were said to appear where fear was strongest, where men faltered, where the earth had absorbed suffering. They mimicked movements, observed silently, disappeared before confrontation. Each encounter strengthened the legend, each diary entry, each whispered story reinforced the others. A pattern emerged, a rhythm to the tunnels that the living could feel but not fully understand. Veterans recalled that the bridge between what they saw and what was believed grew thinner. Reality and perception intertwined. Every patrol left with more questions than answers. Every shadow seemed to carry memory. Every whisper seemed to echo the past. The earth itself became a storyteller, recounting fear, courage, and the inexplicable. Soldiers learned to move differently, to listen, to feel, aware that the tunnels themselves held secrets, that not all presences belonged to the living. By the end of the month, a strange order had settled. Units moved with care, torches held steady, silence observed with reverence. Reports documented anomalies, shadows, voices, vanished items. Yet diaries and oral accounts painted a richer picture, one that the official logs could never capture. Fact and folklore had merged. The tunnels were alive, alive with memory, alive with shadows that refused to be explained. The bridge had been crossed. From isolated incidents to a web of interconnected experience, soldiers, villagers, and time itself weaving together a narrative that could not be untangled. Shadows tested courage, whispered warnings, guided or misled. The tunnels contained not just men and weapons, but the residue of human experience, fear, bravery, and the inexplicable. As the patrols moved forward, the sense of presence remained, patient, observing, ever just beyond the torchlight. The deeper the patrols ventured, the narrower the corridors became, the air thick with damp and the metallic tang of fear. Torches flickered, casting shadows that seemed to writhe, moving independently of the men. Each step echoed against mud walls, carrying sound farther than sight could reach. The soldiers advanced cautiously, every sense alert, hearts hammering, breaths shallow, a sudden shift, a low whisper, or perhaps the wind, a scrape along the wall, a shadow detaching from torchlight, moving against the expected rhythm. Soldiers froze, rifles raised, eyes searching, nothing visible, yet awareness screamed presence. It was patient, almost intelligent, measuring courage, waiting for the living to falter. One scout raised his torch. The light swung along the corridor, illuminating mud walls. Then a flicker shapes forming, retreating, merging with darkness. Footsteps echoed, yet none matched their own. Breaths caught in throats, the tunnel seemed to pulse with life. The soldiers realized they were not alone, not merely in the sense of enemies, but in a way that defied comprehension. Items disappeared, rations vanished, rifles left in impossible places. Diaries described tools found atop ledges balanced as if deliberately placed. Logs note anomalies. Unidentified presence scrawled in official records. Soldiers whispered that the walls themselves remembered, that the earth carried memory. Each encounter intensified the tension, the feeling that the unseen was testing them, teasing them, observing. A sudden movement near a junction, shadows stretching unnaturally, one figure stepping forward, mirroring the men's motions, rifles fired. Nothing hit. The figure vanished, leaving only the echo of footsteps, cold drafts brushing shoulders, heartbeats pounding. Some men swore they felt fingers against skin. fleeting, chilling, moments where courage faltered, but duty pressed them onward. Villagers' stories reinforced the fear, lights moving beneath the soil, voices calling names of the fallen, fleeting figures appearing and disappearing, whispers that followed patrols, every account blending with the soldiers' experiences, creating a tapestry of fact and folklore, impossible to separate. Shadows were more than legend. They were part of the tunnels, part of the memory, part of the earth itself. One patrol encountered carvings in mud, appearing overnight, symbols glowing faintly in torchlight. No human hand claimed them, yet all noted their presence. They pulsed, almost alive, almost watching. The soldiers moved carefully, listening, scanning, aware that each corridor held a potential encounter, that every junction could conceal more than a simple shadow. Sounds intensified, soft scuffles in the dark, whispers in unison, repetitions of commands, names. Some soldiers reported seeing shapes at the periphery, mimicking movements, retreating when approached, always returning, assessing. The lines between perception and reality blurred. Each encounter left a residue: fear, awe, doubt, curiosity. A unit advancing near a collapsed section heard voices, low, indecipherable, repeating their own words. The torchlight swung, shadows twisted. Then one figure appeared, tall, almost human, then melted into darkness. Nothing else. The men paused, cautious, every breath measured, aware that the unseen had crossed from observation to interaction, testing limits, testing courage. Items vanished mid-patrol, rations, rifles, logs annotated, letters tucked in journals, all hinting at presence. Each anomaly heightened the sense of suspense. Shadows were no longer peripheral. They became central, central to every step, every decision. Every soldier felt it, a consciousness, aware, measuring, not malevolent, not benevolent, simply present, eternal, patient, waiting. The folklore solidified. Shadow walkers, figures mimicking men, aware, patient, elusive. Each diary letter report added to the legend, converging accounts painting a consistent pattern, independent units corroborating, villagers observing flickering lights, voices in empty corridors, figures that vanished. The tunnels became a living narrative, fact and myth indistinguishable. Every patrol left changed, shadows testing courage, echoing memories, the tunnels themselves instructing, guiding, warning. Soldiers moved with reverence, torches steady, silence observed. Every corridor treated with respect, aware that the earth remembered, that the past lingered in every step, every shadow carried history, every whisper a warning. By the end of the deepest sections, the pattern was undeniable. Multiple units, independent diaries, corroborating villagers, lights, shadows, vanished items, whispers. The tunnels were alive, alive with memory, with shadows refusing explanation. Each encounter intensified understanding, fear intertwined with awe, courage tested against the inexplicable. Soldiers realized the tunnels were more than strategy. They were theater, of history, of memory, of the unknown. The presence lingered, patient, observing, always just beyond torchlight, always beyond comprehension, always a reminder that in the Kuchi tunnels, the living walk alongside memory, courage, and the shadows of those who will never leave. The tunnels stretch onward, silent witnesses to events long past, echoes of footsteps lingering in the mud, whispers carried through narrow corridors. The soldiers who walked here have long since left, yet the presence remains, patient, observing, aware. The earth retains memory of courage, fear, and those who vanished without explanation. Each step taken by the living leaves an imprint, yet the shadows do not fade. Some corridors are empty, some seem to pulse with life. Shadows move where no one stands. Whispers repeat names of the long dead. Items appear where none should exist. Torches flicker against walls that seem alive. Some say the tunnels themselves remember, that every sacrifice, every heartbeat, every whisper has been recorded in the mud and timber. The soldiers who survived speak quietly, hesitant to recount, knowing that words can scarcely capture what they saw, what they felt. Villagers continue to tell their stories, of lights beneath the soil, of voices echoing in abandoned corridors, of fleeting figures that vanish before eyes can focus. These tales weave together with the soldiers' experiences, creating a tapestry that is neither fully fact nor fully myth. The shadow walkers endure, patient, elusive, observing, testing courage, patience, fear. The tunnels have become a living narrative, a fusion of history and legend. Even now, decades later, visitors to the area speak of a strange feeling, an awareness of being watched, a chill passing unexpectedly, whispers in the breeze that echo the past. Archaeologists and historians record facts, maps, measurements, yet the intangible persists, the stories that cannot be verified, shadows that refuse to be explained. The Kuchi tunnels exist on two planes, one of human strategy, one of memory myth, and the inexplicable. The soldiers' diaries remain. Smudged ink fading pages, letters tucked in corners, sketches of corridors that shift under torchlight, symbols carved into mud, traces of encounters that defy explanation. All point to the same truth, that beneath the earth history is not silent. It whispers, it observes, it tests those who dare to enter. Each person who walks these tunnels becomes part of the narrative, part of the bridge between fact and folklore, between memory and legend. Some encounters are fleeting, a shadow detaching from the wall, a cold draft brushing a shoulder, footsteps echoing in empty passages. Others leave deeper marks, vanished items, repeated patterns, names called from nowhere, inscriptions appearing overnight, moments that linger in the mind long after torches are extinguished. The living and the unseen coexist here, intertwined, inseparable. The tunnels are not just physical, they are temporal, emotional, spiritual. Many soldiers swore they felt a presence, guiding or warning them, testing courage, forcing reflection. Some found themselves speaking in whispers, explaining themselves to shadows, apologizing, defiant, curious. The folklore grew alongside fact, each experience building upon another, creating a network of testimony, of fear, of awe, of memory. The shadow walkers are patient, always just beyond reach, always observing. For those who venture here today, the tunnels retain their enigma, even armed with maps, torches, knowledge of history. The unexpected awaits, a draft, a sound, a shape out of place. Visitors feel it, the lingering imprint of lives and shadows. The earth does not forget, and the tunnels do not release their secrets easily. Every step carries history, courage, and the inexplicable. As you imagine these passages, picture the narrow corridors, the low ceilings, the smell of damp earth, the weight of memory pressing down. Hear the whispers, the echoes, footsteps that do not belong. Shadows flicker in your mind, the sensation of being observed. That is the legacy of the Kuchi tunnels. They are more than strategic routes, more than war machinery. They are living stories, woven from fact, fear, courage, and legend. The shadow walkers endure, testing those who dare to enter. Their presence is a reminder that history is not only written in records and diaries, but also in memory, in fear, in the echoes of those who walked before. You cannot fully understand them. You can only witness, imagine, feel. The corridors stretch endlessly, and the past waits silently, watching, assessing, reminding us of the human experience and the mysteries that refuse to die. Before we leave these tunnels, before the torchlight fades, consider this: every shadow, every whisper, every vanished item is a fragment of memory, of courage, of the unexplained. The Kuchi tunnels carry both the living and the unseen, and they hold stories that cannot be erased, that cannot be fully explained. They are alive with echoes, with history, with legend. You have just walked these tunnels with us, through voices and memories, shadows and whispers. If you want to explore more, if you want to uncover hidden stories from history, you have just listened to another case from Echoes of the Unknown. If you want to know more, subscribe now and join us in discovering the world's forgotten corridors. But remember, even now, somewhere beneath the earth, the shadows watch, patient, observing, waiting.